"What's in your pocket, girl?" Officer Trent Hadley barked, his flashlight beam slicing through the evening air, deliberately blinding her. To him, her school uniform was suspect, her very presence in this neighborhood, a problem that needed solving. "Private school uniform in this part of town? What'd you steal to afford that?" he smirked, circling her like prey. "I'm just walking home," Zora said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You people always have an excuse," he spat, the words landing like venom on her skin. Without warning, he grabbed the hem of her skirt, yanked it upward as his partner watched, unmoved. Phones emerged from nearby storefronts. Gasps rippled. He thought he was exposing contraband. Instead, he exposed his own bigotry to the world. Because she wasn't just any 17-year-old, she was Zora Pierce, Mayor Elijah Pierce's daughter. Now she stood there, humiliation burning through her veins, saying nothing, just memorizing badges. What happens when the mayor discovers his daughter was violated by those sworn to protect? How will officers Hadley and Mercer react when they learn whose child they've assaulted? Will their desperate explanations save their careers or their freedom? And what justice awaits those who weaponize their badges against a child? Stay with us to witness how the story unfolds and subscribe to the channel. Westridge was a neighborhood in transition, gentrifying brownstones, sat beside corner stores with security gates, wealth and struggle coexisting in uneasy balance. The autumn air carried the scent of restaurant exhaust mixed with fallen leaves as streetlights flickered to life along Maywood Avenue. The evening commute was tapering off, with fewer cars but plenty of pedestrians making their way home. Professionals in tailored coats, service workers in branded uniforms, and students with heavy backpacks. Among them walked Zora Pierce, tall and graceful at 17, her posture impeccable even after a grueling day of advanced placement classes and debate team practice. Her Rosewood Academy uniform, pleated navy skirt, crisp white button-down, and burgundy blazer with gold trim, stood out among the casual street clothes around her. The prestigious private school was a 40-minute bus ride from this neighborhood, worlds apart in resources but connected by students like Zora who traversed both realms daily. She'd stayed late at school to finish research for her civic engagement project, missing her usual bus and the chance to change clothes at home before her weekly visit to her grandmother. Now, darkness was falling as she walked the familiar route to Grandma Lucille's apartment, her leather messenger bag heavy with textbooks against her hip. Wireless earbuds delivered Kendrick Lamar's contemplative lyrics as she mentally rehearsed points for tomorrow's debate on municipal budget priorities. Zora wasn't oblivious to the looks her uniform sometimes drew in this neighborhood, a symbol of privilege in a place where many struggled. But she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Her father had taught her to navigate all spaces with dignity, whether at formal political galas or community basketball courts. "Never apologize for existing in any room," Mayor Pierce often reminded her. The police cruiser had been parked at the corner convenience store for the past 15 minutes. Inside, officers Trent Hadley and Kevin Mercer were finishing coffee while scanning the street through the storefront window. Hadley, a 12-year veteran with a perpetual scowl and thinning blonde hair, nudged his partner as Zora passed. "Private school uniform at this hour? In this neighborhood?" Hadley muttered. "That doesn't add up." Mercer, younger and still capable of occasional curiosity before judgment, shrugged. "Probably lives around here. Some of those schools give scholarships. Or selling something to afford that tuition," Hadley replied, tossing his cup in the trash. "Let's check it out." The officers left the convenience store, the bell above the door announcing their exit as they tracked Zora from half a block behind. Hadley's face had already hardened into the mask of suspicion he wore like a second uniform. Eyes narrowed, jaw set, shoulders squared for confrontation rather than protection. "See how she keeps checking her bag?" Hadley said, though Zora had merely adjusted the strap once as it dug into her shoulder. Classic nervous behavior. Mercer nodded automatically, more from habit than agreement. 3 years on the force under Hadley's mentorship had trained him to follow his partner's lead, especially in this district where Hadley claimed to have street instincts that bordered on supernatural. What those instincts really amounted to, though Mercer would never admit it aloud, was a hair-trigger response to anyone young, black, and out of place, according to Hadley's narrow definition of belonging. "You really think she's dealing?" Mercer asked, keeping his voice neutral. "These private school kids are the perfect cover," Hadley explained with the confidence of someone who'd already written the story in his head. Rich classmates with cash to burn, access to the good neighborhoods, and connections to suppliers. Get yourself a scholarship kid from the hood as your mule, and you've got the perfect setup. They quickened their pace, closing the distance until they were just 15 feet behind Zora, who remained unaware with her music playing. Ahead, the block grew quieter as residential buildings replaced storefronts. Fewer witnesses, perfect timing in Hadley's mind. "Let's light her up," Hadley said, pulling his tactical flashlight from his belt. The powerful beam hit Zora directly in the back of her head, then swung around as she turned, momentarily blinding her. She pulled out her earbuds, blinking in confusion at the sudden assault on her senses. "Police, stay right where you are," Hadley called out, his voice shifting into the performative authority he used when he wanted someone to know who was in charge. Zora froze, her hand instinctively tightening on the strap of her bag, a motion Hadley immediately logged as suspicious in his mental report, already being written to justify whatever came next. "Hands where I can see them," Hadley commanded, moving closer while Mercer positioned himself slightly behind Zora, cutting off any potential retreat. The girl raised her hands slowly, her school bag hanging awkwardly from one elbow. "What seems to be the problem, officers?" Zora asked, her voice steady despite the flutter of panic in her chest. Her father had prepared her for this moment, had sat her down when she turned 12 and carefully explained how to survive police encounters when you existed in a body they found inherently suspicious. Hadley circled her like a predator, flashlight beam intentionally moving across her face every few seconds. "What are you doing in this neighborhood at this hour?" "I'm walking to my grandmother's apartment. She lives on Westover Street," Zora replied, maintaining eye contact despite the disorienting light. "Pretty fancy uniform for around here," Hadley continued, his tone making the observation an accusation. "What's in the bag?" "Just school books and my laptop." Mercer watched silently, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his discomfort growing with each second. "You know what we find a lot in this area?" Hadley said, moving uncomfortably close to Zora. "Kids using their school bags to transport drugs. Real convenient system." "I don't have any drugs," Zora stated firmly. "You're welcome to check my ID. I'm just trying to get to my grandmother's." "Oh, we'll do more than check your ID," Hadley smirked, his hand already reaching for her bag. "We're going to check everything." Hadley yanked the messenger bag from Zora's arm, unzipping it roughly and dumping its contents onto the sidewalk. Textbooks thudded against concrete, papers scattered in the evening breeze, her laptop slid dangerously close to the curb. "Nothing here," he muttered, kicking through her belongings with his boot. His disappointment morphed instantly into deeper suspicion. "Which means you're hiding it somewhere else." "I'm not hiding anything," Zora insisted, her composure beginning to crack. "Girls like you get creative," Hadley said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "Hiding spots under those fancy uniform skirts." Without warning, he grabbed the hem of her pleated skirt and yanked it upward, exposing her thighs to the open street. Time fractured into crystalline shards of humiliation. Zora's world contracted to a single point of violation, the cold air against her exposed skin, the officer's rough hand still gripping her skirt, the shocking weightlessness of dignity stripped away in public. Her body froze while her mind raced, catching fragmented details with preternatural clarity. Hadley's satisfied smirk, Mercer's averted eyes, the sudden silence of the street. Then, as if emerging from underwater, sound returned. A woman's voice called out sharply from a nearby stoop. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing to that child?" Mrs. Abernathy, 73 years old and fearless, stood clutching her evening newspaper like a weapon. The interruption broke the spell. Zora yanked her skirt back down, her hands trembling but determined. Hadley released the fabric but didn't step back, his authority challenged but not defeated. "Police business," he barked toward Mrs. Abernathy without looking away from Zora. "Go back inside, ma'am." But Mrs. Abernathy wasn't the only witness now. Lights flicked on in adjacent apartments. A delivery driver had stopped his car, phone raised and recording. Two college students stood frozen on the corner, whispering urgently to each other. This residential block, usually quiet at dusk, was suddenly very much awake and watching. "I said, what are you doing to that girl?" Mrs. Abernathy persisted, descending one step, then another. "That's sexual assault on a minor, is what that is." Mercer shifted uncomfortably, finally finding his voice. "Hadley, maybe we should..." "Should what?" Hadley snapped. "Let potential dealers walk because some nosy neighbor doesn't understand police procedure?" He turned back to Zora, doubling down rather than backing off. "Empty your pockets. All of them." Zora met his gaze directly now, something shifting in her expression from fear to a controlled, simmering anger. She reached slowly into her blazer pocket and withdrew her student ID card and a sleek phone in a designer case with the city seal subtly embossed in the corner, the kind of detail only someone looking for it would notice. "My pockets are empty except for my identification and my phone," she said, her voice louder now, pitched to carry to the growing audience. "Would you like to see my ID, Officer Hadley?" The use of his name, which he hadn't offered, caused a momentary flicker in his expression. He snatched the ID card and scanned it, lingering on the name. Zora E. Pierce, Rosewood Academy. "Pierce," he repeated, something tugging at his memory but not quite connecting. "Yes, officer. Zora Pierce," she confirmed, then added with deliberate emphasis, "daughter of Mayor Elijah Pierce." The words landed like a physical blow. Hadley's face drained of color so rapidly it was visible even in the dim street lighting. Mercer inhaled sharply, taking an involuntary step backward as the full implications crashed over him. Mayor Elijah Pierce, the city's first black mayor, former civil rights attorney, and architect of the controversial police accountability measures that had half the force calling for his resignation. The same Mayor Pierce whose election Hadley had bitterly opposed in the break room, whose policies he blamed for making the job impossible, whose daughter now stood before him with her schoolwork scattered across the sidewalk and the imprint of his hand still visible on her skirt. "That's right," came Mrs. Abernathy's triumphant voice as she reached the bottom step. "That's our mayor's daughter you just assaulted, and we all saw it." She gestured to the growing crowd, at least 3 of whom were openly recording now. The delivery driver called out, "I got it all, start to finish, already tweeted it." Hadley's training finally kicked in through his shock. He straightened, adopting an official tone that fooled no one. "Miss Pierce, I apologize for the misunderstanding. We received reports of suspicious activity in the area and—" "Save it," Zora interrupted, her voice steady now. "I'll need both your badge numbers, and I'd like my property returned intact, please." Mercer immediately knelt to gather her scattered belongings, his hands clumsy with panic. Hadley remained frozen, career flashing before his eyes as he desperately calculated exit strategies. "My father," Zora continued, taking her laptop from Mercer's outstretched hands, "has been collecting data on exactly this type of police interaction. I believe you've just provided him with a very personal case study, officers." A car turned onto the street, slowing as it approached the scene. In the gathering darkness, the official mayoral seal on its door gleamed under the streetlights like an omen. The black SUV with municipal plates pulled to a smooth stop at the curb. Mayor Elijah Pierce didn't emerge immediately. Instead, the window lowered just enough to reveal his profile as he assessed the tableau before him. His daughter standing tall amid scattered schoolwork, 2 uniformed officers in visible distress, and a half-dozen neighborhood witnesses with phones raised like modern-day witnesses to injustice. Mayor Pierce had developed a reputation for unflappable composure during his 15 years in public service, first as a district attorney prosecuting corruption, then as a city councilman, and now as mayor. That composure was being severely tested as he registered his daughter's disheveled appearance and the protective way she clutched her skirt. He stepped from the vehicle with the measured movements of someone containing volcanic emotion beneath a professional veneer. At 52, Elijah Pierce cut an imposing figure, 6'2" with close-cropped silver hair accentuating deep brown skin and penetrating eyes that had stared down police commissioners and corporate CEOs alike. "Zora," he said simply, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had won him 3 elections. "Dad," she responded, her own composure finally cracking slightly. "I was just on my way to Grandma's." The mayor nodded once, then turned his attention to the officers. Recognition was immediate, not of their faces, but of what they represented. He'd seen countless variations of this scene in case files, community testimonies, and campaign stops. The difference was that this time it was his child. "Officers," he acknowledged, his tone neutral but his eyes cataloging their badges, nameplates, and every detail of their appearance. "I understand there's been an incident." Hadley's face had cycled from shock to calculation. 20 years on the force had taught him that power always recognized power, that there was a language between those with authority that civilians weren't privy to. He straightened his spine and adopted what he clearly thought was a reasonable, colleague-to-colleague tone. "Mr. Mayor, sir, unfortunate misunderstanding. We were responding to reports of drug activity in the area, and given the hour and circumstances, I'm going to stop you right there, Officer Hadley," the mayor interrupted, his voice remaining measured but dropping several degrees in temperature. "My driver will take my daughter to her grandmother's house. I'll remain here to discuss this misunderstanding in detail, including," he nodded toward the continuing phone recordings, "why my underage daughter was subjected to a search that appears to have violated at least 6 departmental regulations and possibly several laws." Hadley's attempt at professional camaraderie withered under the mayor's gaze. Mercer, still clutching Zora's history textbook, looked like he might be sick. "Zora," the mayor said without looking away from the officers, "go with Marcus. I'll join you at Grandma's shortly." As the mayoral SUV pulled away with Zora safely inside, the dynamic of the street corner shifted palpably. Without his daughter present, Mayor Pierce's diplomatic restraint gave way to cold, focused anger. The gathered neighbors sensed the change and drew closer, their phones still recording what had become an impromptu public reckoning. "Names and badge numbers," the mayor stated, not a request but a command. "Officer Trent Hadley, badge number 4572, Hadley replied automatically, training overriding his growing alarm. "Officer Kevin Mercer, badge 8914, followed his partner, voice barely audible. Mayor Pierce committed these to memory, then turned to the witnesses. "I'd appreciate statements from anyone who observed what happened here tonight." Mrs. Abernathy stepped forward immediately. "Elijah Pierce, I've known you since you were running for city council with those homemade flyers. I saw it all. This one," she jabbed a finger toward Hadley, "grabbed your daughter's skirt and pulled it up in full view of the street. No warning, no female officer present, nothing. Just violated that child because he could." The mayor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he maintained his composure. "Would you be willing to provide an official statement?" Already texted my nephew at Channel 8, Mrs. Abernathy replied. But yes, I'll tell anyone who'll listen. The delivery driver approached next, phone extended. I've got video from when they first stopped her. Got the audio, too. They never mentioned drugs until after they searched her bag and found nothing. Hadley's face darkened. You're interfering with police business. There is no police business here, Officer Hadley, Mayor Pierce replied evenly. There is only the matter of two armed city employees detaining and inappropriately searching a minor without cause, without a warrant, and without a guardian present. He turned to address both officers directly. Your body cam should have captured everything, assuming they're operational as required by department policy, the policy I signed into law last year. I'll be requesting that footage first thing in the morning, along with any dispatch records authorizing your presence in this area. Mercer paled visibly.